Hello, everyone. This is Jeilene Tracey. Welcome to another segment of Friends in the Field. Joining me today is the lovely and wonderful Karen Swain, all the way from Australia. Karen is a wonderful spiritual teacher, mentor, creator, and galactic guide. She's got a radio and a podcast. She's a host for it called the Accentuate the Positive Media. She's an author, an inspirational speaker, a facilitator of events, conferences, and seminars, and she enlightens you to the power of your thoughts and beliefs. And Karen, you've been at this for a long time, many years, and we were just having a little chat, and we've actually had lots of conversations before with sort of me on the other side of the mic, if you will. And I'm excited to talk to you today to hear more about your story and your journey into becoming a healer and a motivational speaker and an inspiration for so many that you have been, and how you came to your work and how you came to understand really what I always think of is when people are on this journey of awakening, it's really discovering the truth of your being and who you
Mhm.
are and how you're meant to serve as a human having, as a spirit having this human experience. So I'd love for you to give us a little background of yourself. I gave just a really short blurb about your background bio, but you can fill in the blanks and tell us a little bit about really how you got to this place and a little bit more about what you're up to these days.
Well, first, I'd like to say hi, Jaylene. So great to be with you again. We've already been yakking for about half an hour, her and I, because
Right,
get the two of us
exactly.
together and we're just off and running. So, as much as I know I'm going to share about me, I'd love to have the conversation because I'm a big fan of Jaylene. She's awesome. And as she says, I've been showcasing New World teachers for a long time. I've been doing this for a long time. So I've seen a lot of New World teachers in my day, experiences coming out, sharing their experiences that don't necessarily think of themselves as teachers. But if you're somebody who's had an experience or you've been abducted by aliens or you've had a near-death experience or a spiritually transformative experience, you've had a big transformation in your life and your life has shifted, and when you share that with others, you're now a teacher, because that's what a teacher does. It's just imparting knowledge. So of all the people I've listened to over the years, when Jaylene gets talking, I'm like really engaged because you got it going on, girl.
Aw, thank you.
But it's a long story with me, and I'm not going to go too much into it. I'm kind of going to speed it up a bit. I was just a kid with a million questions, questions my parents couldn't answer, thinking about life, love, and the universe in a way that my parents were not interested in thinking about. Like most people, they were thinking about how to get money, how to be successful, how to be happy, which is what I was thinking about too. But I'm asking things like, we were not religious. And I'm like, how can a baby be born in sin? I don't understand why the church baptizes the baby. And we didn't go to church, we weren't a religious. And so my mother would kind of look at me and go, I don't know, like, why are you asking those questions?
Right.
Like, it's like a high conscious soul. I mean, I've been here many times before, but we go through the veil of forgetfulness, or as one of my last guests, Samuel Chong, said, the river of oblivion, he called it. And I'm like, oh, I love that.
Mm,
We come under the river of oblivion and then we totally forget who we are. And then we struggle to remember. So asking questions is that way of like trying to understand this world, even though we've been here many times before. We look around this world and we see this crazy stuff going on and we're like, why? Anyway, that was me. And then mum got sick and I'm like, why? She's sick. Why is she so grumpy? She was grumpy. Lots of stuff happened before. I should really write a Hollywood movie about it because there's so many components to this story, because they were rich and beautiful and part of the sort of A-list set of Sydney society, and every time they went out for dinner they got their faces in the paper. Like, why? I don't know, because it's not like they were famous or anything. They were just part of that silly social
right.
society thing. And dad was having affairs and mum was hating it, and like it was like a Hollywood movie going on. And the three kids, were three at the time, were caught in the crossfire between the fights between mum and dad. And eventually dad leaves for a pretty model, like a 24-year-old model, and mum basically hated herself to death. I just watched her be miserable, and and it took 5 years and she was dead. And so more questions in me, like, why? And then after she died, I'm like, where do you go? What's all this death thing about? Where do we come from? And then she would come to me in dreams and tell me she wasn't dead over and over again.
Oh, wow.
But to
So
the
lots of visitation dreams from her, not just one, but
yeah, lots
several.
of astral travel dreams, which we
Hmm.
all experience every night. And I
Hmm.
think kids, have more memory of it. They're less under the river of oblivion than, most of us. I think that when we hit
Absolutely.
teenagehood, yeah, and they have these experiences at night, and they say, I had this crazy dream, I was doing this and this and this, and then parents just go, it's just a dream. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just your imagination.
Yeah.
We don't give it any cred. And
Right.
we've got to give this stuff cred, because we're all flying around the universe when our bodies are asleep at night doing amazing things.
Yeah.
Sometimes we remember, most of the time we don't, because that river of oblivion, it's pretty strong. It amazes me how strong it is, actually. It's a constant commitment. I was going to say battle, and I changed it. It's a commitment to your spiritual journey, to put your head above that river, like keep your head above the water. It's so easy that we can drown in it,
Yeah, it's so
drown.
easy to just sort of say, oh, it's too much work. I'm just going to pop under and spend some time under again.
Right. Right. And I've seen that a lot with conscious teachers or experiences over the years.
Hmm.
They sort of pop up and they have this memory, and then trying to maintain that state of awareness while the river, a fast flowing river of collective consciousness, is saying, come with us, get drunk, take drugs, don't
Right.
think about this stuff. I remember my
Right.
best friend at the time, who ended up killing herself when she was 36. She would say to me, why do you think about stuff so much? Like she was trying to say to me, don't think about this stuff. Like, let's just think about fashion and what party we can go to and what clothes we can wear. Like, don't ask these questions. You think too much. You know what I mean? Like, they're
Right.
always trying to drag us back into the river.
Yes.
And sometimes we get lost in the river again. And Jeilene and I were just talking about the Arcturians, or the mob that I call my guides, have said to me with a very funny sense of humor, the biggest game on your planet is the blame game. You
Yes.
humans just love blaming everyone for your problems. And that's that river of oblivion. Like, let's blame the government. Let's blame somebody else. Like, let's not take responsibility for how I am the creator of my reality.
Right.
And yeah, so anyway, back to my story. It was a long journey, asking questions, popping my head above the river, drowning again in the river, popping up for some air, drowning again, popping up until eventually you're kind of floating on the top of it. I think I'm floating on top now. I can sort of I can feel the current. I can see the current. I can feel it, but I don't feel swept up by it anymore. You
Hmm.
had a question.
Yeah, I do actually. You mentioned your mob, and I always love the way you refer to all the guides that you talk to, because often people will ask us as teachers of conscious creation and how to connect deeper, is who do you talk to and who are your guides? And part of the time it's one group. It's maybe in my case the mantis, and I know in yours as well, but it could also be the Arcturians, it could be the Syrians, it could be really anybody that you're vibrationally matching in that moment, or just, your own soul who's had so many lifetimes of experience and can bring you a lot of wisdom. So, how did you come up with the name The Mob, and who do you generally um, connect to now versus when you were first starting? Because I know guides and mentors change for us in spirit. Is there a group that you spoke with a lot while you were in your awakening journey, and are they the same, or do you feel like that's really changed for you over time?
Well, it really depends on who you are and what you're here to do. Like, before we come, as you know, we kind of plan our lives, give it,
Hmm.
like, we have an intention or a desire of what we want to experience down here. So with me, because I'm a teacher, but I'm also somebody who, showcases other teachers, and a teacher of teachers, really. I
Yeah.
remember when I was a young girl, I heard somebody say, I'm a teacher of teachers. And that just hit me like, oh my God, that's who I am. When you hear other people talk about yourselves, it'll resonate with you about who you think you are. I, I'm connected to a stream of consciousness that really had no identity. And so when I was a young girl running around trying to find out who my spirit guide was, I'd go to psychic and gurus and stuff, and I would ask, who's my spirit guide? And everyone would give me a different name and a different, a red Indian guy. And an angel and somebody, and they were all different. And I'm like, there's no consistency. Like nobody's seeing anything. And anyway, my guides, the mob, or my higher self even, just thought that was hilarious. It's like I was some sitcom. I was a comedy show to them as I was running around trying to remember who I am. And I was doing a course, and I got this tape back in the days when we had tape recorders, this tape, and I meet your spirit guide, and it's a guided meditation, and you walk down a path in a lovely valley, and you come across a spring or a pond, and you sit by the pond, and you invite your spirit guide to come and meet you, and no one was coming. And so I said to the teacher, I can't get that. I'm not getting anything. And he just said, well, maybe you're not good at it. He just like wrote me off. And so I tried and tried and tried again, because I really wanted to know who my spirit guide was. Again, they thought I was hilarious. And they just said to me, in my head, just some thoughts in my head, oh God, Karen, we've been so many different identities. You keep looking for identity, and we've been so many identities. Really, you are the creator of your own reality. If you want to speak to an identity, pick one and we'll show up as that. And I thought, And so at the time, I'm a young girl, and I'm like, well, I'd like, handsome young man. And as soon as I had that thought, bang, in my third eye, I saw this beautiful, young man standing before me smiling. Hello, do you like this form? Is this to your liking?
Yes.
And it just showed me that really what was funny to them is that I'd been in constant communication with them my whole life, and yet I had just written it off as common sense. Like you have a desire, and then you get some common sense, and then you've got, what you really want to do. And that maybe that's not the best thing to do, but you've got common sense talking to you, and you got to pick which one you want to do, and free will. So I believe we're all guided all the time. And it's just a matter of waking up to that guidance. And sometimes it doesn't come with identity, because everyone has a higher self, and everyone has an angelic team, and everyone has a spirit team who have been many different identities. They've either been your mother in a past life, or your father, or your lover, or your friend, or they've been someone in this life that have passed on, who are a part of your soul group or your team.
Right.
That are constantly, giving you messages in many different ways. Like we're never, ever alone. We're not doing physical life by ourselves. We've got this huge spiritual team that's cheering us on,
Yeah,
that's supporting
absolutely.
us. And depending on what message you've got to bring, like I know with you, Jeilene, you've got the manta beings that are really talking about, what they talk about, and human health and DNA structure and stuff. Like you've got a message to bring. And so that group amongst your mob are more present or prevalent, or have made themselves known to you inside identity.
Right.
And they can be identity in physical form in another dimension, or you could be talking to, souls that have been manted, and you're talking to their higher self or their group soul.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically, as I said to you before we turned the recording on, I had someone on my show, Claudia Edge, who wrote the books, Messages from the Edge, and she's taught every night in her astral, and she has memory. She writes it down in the morning, spirit school, she calls it. And she said, I dip into the cup of the ocean of knowledge, I think she called it. And when she said that, I thought, oh, that's beautiful. The ocean, like I dip my cup into the ocean of knowledge at night, and I wake up in the morning with a full cup, and I remember and I write down what I've learned. And really, like, that's what I feel like the mob is. It's like a collective consciousness of the ocean of knowledge. Some people would call that God, but it's an ocean of knowledge that comprises and includes identity if you choose. Like I can talk to the Arcturian collective or the Palladian collective. I can talk to a soul that's been a friend or a relative in physically incarnate. I can talk to their soul in spirit. Like you can hone it down, or you can talk to groups and collectives, and you can sort of go bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It just depends what you're teaching, why you're teaching it. It just depends on who you are and what you're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people,
yeah. And I think that when we have an intention, it sets our vibration.
Right.
I'm all about vibration, right? And it sets our vibration of a certain tone, which allows you to connect to different beings. When you have, you know, with all of our thoughts having energy and creating energy within it, it creates that frequency within you, and then it enables you to connect to. Because I know that when I'm having certain thoughts and I'm creating a course about DNA, then I'm definitely going to be connecting to the mantis and working with them and mentoring with them. And then if I'm talking more about, as you talk a lot about conscious creation and things like that, then it's probably going to be more the Arcturian friends of mine that I'm going to connect with. And then sometimes, you know, you'll be sitting down with a client and they really have something that needs more of an angelic presence or Mother Mary or something like that. And then that presence comes in. And for me, vibrationally, I can always feel the difference between these, even though they're all part of that ocean, they do have a different vibrational frequency to them that I find very interesting, and that's how I can tell the difference between them. I think, you know, I wouldn't need to see an actual being or a face. I would just need to feel that frequency. And I
Yeah.
think that as humans, that's how that is our, and that is sort of the language of the universe is vibration and frequency, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
That's,
like an energy
yeah,
signature, an
it
energy
is. And that's
in the,
how all those beings who communicate telepathically understand each other, I think. It's like,
right.
it's that
Yeah.
imprint of energy, right?
Imprint of energy. Exactly. It's like you as the identity of Jailene is a is a different energy signature, but including the energy signature of your soul or oversoul or higher
Yes.
self.
Yes.
So it includes it, but it's different
Yes.
because there's a different, you know, you are a creation of your
Yes.
higher self, the mind body complex, the personality, the beliefs, the subconscious structure, you know, like it's, yeah. And that's what we connect to in spirit, like a psychic talks to a dead person. They
Yes.
connect to a personality, like the oversoul or higher self, you know, creates this personality that is recognizable by the people that are left on earth that knew them as that personality. It's like Jesus came to teach me this.
Yes.
And he
Yes.
came to teach me this because, as I said, I grew up in a very non religious family. And I looked out at religion and I just, just didn't see, I didn't like what I saw,
Right.
basically. I wasn't being pumped by school or parents that you've got to believe, you've got to believe. So I had this freedom to look and I didn't like what I saw. And I think I carried a lot of past life trauma from being maybe burnt at the stake for being a witch and you know a heretic within religious structure and past lives. But I think Jesus came to me in the form of Jesus because he wanted me to make peace, you know, to clean up that distortion that I had around religion. So I thought that anybody that talked to you about Jesus, you know, I called them a God botherer, and like they'd knock on your door and say, you
Right.
know, Jesus is going to save your soul. I felt like slapping them. Yeah. So I think that he presented himself to me in the form of Jesus because he wanted me to clean that up. And but he said to me, you know, that identity of Jesus was just one identity. I've been so many. I've been so many identities. I don't have to present myself as Jesus to you to speak to you because I'm more of that, you know, I'm more of that sea, that ocean of knowledge
Yeah, that
than I am
continuum.
identity.
Hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, so yeah, so the identity from the ocean of knowledge can come out and present itself to you because you're wearing a linear human mind that
Right.
is rooted in identity consciousness. It's like I know you because of your identity, not because of your oversoul or energy signature. I know your name, I know what you look like, I know what you do. You know, we formulate these identities in order to know somebody, but that's not the way that my guides work with me. And so it doesn't mean that they can't work with other people like that, because having introduced people to their guides, they're always looking at identity. They're looking at either an ET soul or an angelic soul or there's always identity that presents itself.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and I
when,
think you're right. As linear human beings, that's very helpful for us. And I think on people's journey of awakening and opening up to the spirit realm and really their multidimensional self is what I like to say. That when we start
yeah,
discovering the truth of our being, right, as spirits having as human existence, it's very helpful for them to get sort of those markers along the way that kind of are the breadcrumbs that keep them going. Oh, right. I'm familiar with, if someone thinks, "Oh, I'm familiar with Jesus," then if they meet Jesus along the way, that, "Oh, that's a familiar, that's a friend to me." Great.
Right.
I know I'm on the right path. It's not a
Hmm.
gargoyle showing up, right?
Hmm.
So I know I'm
Hmm.
doing well, and because Spirit wants us to understand that we are these multidimensional beings, and so
Right.
however they need to show up. And I think that kind of segues into the next topic I want to ask you about is the book that you helped with, The Awakened by Death, because it's in death so often, or when people have those near death experiences, right, that they start to realize, oh, okay, all of these beings were around me all of the time, and now I can actually see them because I've disembarked from my body for a little while, and I can now get the full gist of the energy field around me. And I see that it's a crowded space. It's not actually as empty as I thought it was. And there's all these people that support me. They're just waiting for me. And I don't have to be
Yeah.
afraid of it, right? And so
Yeah.
if we could just all live our lives from that perspective of knowing that we're never alone and that we're surrounded and that there's this wonderful place to go to when we pass or transition into, I think that that would be so wonderful. And I love that you did that book because I think that that's such a wonderful avenue into helping people get closer to the truth of their being is through the death process because everybody has to deal with that.
Yeah. I want to just not correct you, but just tweak what you said a little bit there,
Yeah,
because
sure.
the messages in the book, both the book Return to Love and Awakened by Death, it's
Mm-hmm.
not so much, I look forward to going back to this beautiful place when I die. But the message is really about this beautiful place is who you are. And you don't
Yeah.
have to die to get there. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you can find that match to that vibration. You can find that alignment to that bliss vibration while you're still incarnate here in a physical third dimensional reality
Mm-hmm.
that is, that is that fast flowing river of fear. Even in that fast flowing river of fear, that a river of oblivion, you can still find alignment to love inside that. And that's really the message of death, because we have given death, the horror. I was
Yes.
watching someone, Samuel, that was on my show last week. He was on another podcast show called Paranormal. And I just love how people make paranormal spooky and scary. It's the same with death. It's like we
Yes.
cloud it with spookiness and scariness, and we put fear all over it. The Grim Reaper is going to come and get you. And you're going, like, death is even the whole, illness debacle that we've been through in the last few years. That fear
Yes.
of death, that fear of dying has been used as a weapon. It's been used as a weapon for eons of time, that death is so scary. And all my dead friends, including mum, poor mum trying to get through to me when I was a teenager, said to me, there is no death. I didn't die. There's no death. Like, there is no death as you understand it on your planet,
Right.
that you cease to exist. You don't cease to exist. You just exist in another reality. You still exist. You're just existing in another reality. And what's even more crazy is that those realities are a part of this reality if you choose it to be. It's just a different frequency, a different vibration that you exist in, that the physical apparatus of our senses, our physical senses, for the most part, don't perceive. Some do. Like, I see lights and I see orbs and stuff like that with my outside eyes. But for the most part, you don't perceive. But I still exist. It's just that your physical apparatus doesn't perceive me. But here I am. I'm still here in your dimension with you, sitting on the couch with you, but you can't see me. So there's
Yes.
no death. And that was really the message of both books, is there is no death. And so people that have NDEs and they die tragically, like, oh God, Nancy Rhines, she, like, atheist goes to heaven. She was a scientist and an atheist, and then she got hit by a truck and she was smashed to a million pieces. So
Oof.
she had this horrendous NDE, and then she actually didn't die when she was under the truck. She died when she was in the operation. She met a guide on the other side who gave her all this information and said, take it back and teach it on Earth. So there was this atheist that didn't believe in life after death or God or any sort of spiritual concepts, has now been given this mandate to come back and teach it. So that was difficult for Nancy, but she's doing a really good job of it. But NDEs happen for a reason, and they happen because, yeah, you have a mission to be a spiritual teacher, or just to crack open or lift your head above the river of oblivion and have a peek into the infinite, multidimensional reality of who we are as infinite creative potential, as pure positive energy, as supreme bliss, and to bring some of that bliss back into this earthly experience and then be that bliss. But many people who have touched bliss in that way and, you know, and say things like, I'm looking forward to dying because I'll return to that bliss. You know, it is their job to not wait to die to return to bliss, but to find that alignment with bliss again.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah. And
either through meditation,
so much to enjoy here.
Yeah, exactly.
Earth is an amazingly beautiful place, and the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes. I mean, we just have to revel in it while we're here.
Right, exactly.
It's fantastic.
My friend David, you might want to have him on your show. He's not actually a spiritual teacher as such. He's a businessman, but he knows he's galactic. And he says to me often, he's one of my best friends, he says to me often, don't you find earthly life so exciting, like going to the supermarket and buying, so doing the really mundanes? Don't you find that really exciting sometimes? He often has this.
Oh, that's got to be David Norman, yeah?
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I love David. Yeah, he's great. Yes.
He often has this epiphany while shopping in the supermarket, doing something really mundane. It's like, you can't do that when you're dead, or you can't do this on the planet that I come from. You know, like the things that we do as humans. Yeah, it's like, this is exciting because where I come from, we don't do this. So like, let's enjoy it.
Yes, there's no rush to leave, to transition into a different dimensional reality when you clamored to get here to this dimensional reality. It's just about enjoying where you are when you're there. And that's a big key to being happy as a human, right?
Right. And Esther Hicks says so often, you know, the teachings of Abraham through Esther Hicks, you know, she talks about the vortex, like getting back to the vortex, like she's like, pat the cat, pat the cat, pat the cat, pat the cat, you know, like find something that puts you in that bliss and do it. Go to the beach, pat the cat, pat the dog, you know, evoke that vibration of love, of unity, of connection that you feel when you're dead, that who we are as a spiritual being before we come into the river of oblivion and forget. You know, there are so many things you can do that can reconnect you and align you to that energy, that energy of bliss. And, you know, I think for many people probably watching your show, Jeilene, and definitely people that watch my show belong to our groups, is that service is really that key. It's like helping others remember, teaching others what you know. It puts you, don't you find that, like when you're in that teaching mode, you're in that, like you're right there. Yeah.
Yep. Yes, and that is it. It's about connecting into that energy. It's interesting when you were talking about the way that we don't need to die in order to awaken to the fact that, you know, we are these amazing beings here that are lucky to be on Earth, and we have this opportunity to have some very intense, emotional, palpable experiences that help us catapult our evolution as spirits, and that's why we came here. Or one of the reasons we came here. But, you know, I think that it's often the case that people want that exit ramp more quickly because it can also be overwhelming, all of the emotions. But it is the emotions, as we were talking about in our chat before we started the show, is that the emotions can be so overwhelming for people that they just can't deal with it, but it's the emotions that are the signpost to helping us understand what it is we came to learn here and what we came to evolve through, right? And then that evolution is holographic and reverberates through the soul energy and can be so healing for so many aspects of your soul, and then all of the energy, people around you, right? You shift your energy, and then your energy imprint affects everyone around you.
Absolutely.
So it has that really large effect, that wave of energy that streams forth from you. And I think that even though it can be overwhelming, that I hope that people always understand that everything that we're feeling in our body is really there to help us to understand who we are, and
is information.
It's information.
It's guidance. Yeah, we're looking for guidance from the guides or the galactic, but we're being guided constantly all the time. I think it was about 25 years ago, and I heard it on a Abraham Hicks CD, the first time I heard it, and it was just such an aha moment that your emotions are not there. They didn't really say it like this, but this is what I got out of it. Your emotions are not there to torture you. They're there to guide you, that your emotions are an indication of the vibration that you're emitting through what you're believing to be true or thinking. So everything is vibration. Light is vibration, and you have codes and rods in your eyes that interpret that vibration, and we call that sight. And then you have an apparatus in your ears that interprets vibration, and we call that hearing. And we have, stuff on our skin that interprets vibration, and we call that touch, and smell and taste. It's all interpretation of vibration. And so emotion is an interpretation of vibration, of the vibration of the thought. So you think and you hear the thought vibration as emotion.
Yes.
As good or bad, according to how it pleases you. So if it feels good, it's a thought that's more in alignment with the truth of who you are as pure positive energy and infinite creative potential. Or if it feels bad, it's an indication that it's a vibration that is not in alignment. So it's your guidance system, like a sat nav. You say, I want to go here, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a healer, and you start criticizing and hating on people. That's really not the teacher and healer you want to be. So those thoughts feel bad. And that's indicating that you've said you wanted to go somewhere. These thoughts aren't going to get you there. So it was the Abraham Hicks that first, enlightened me to that. And it was such an aha moment. And as I say, like about 25 years ago, and I've seen that play out in my life, and I use it constantly. If I hit a thought that doesn't feel good, if I start to feel good, I question the thought. I've used Byron Katie's work, the work. Yeah. It says, question your stressful thoughts.
Yes.
And so if you feel the stress, you question the validity of that thought. Is that thought true? And can you find one that feels better than that thought? Like, can you move up the emotional scale? Can you find some? Because we believe our stressful thoughts. Like, I'm not good enough. I won't be able to do this. I can't have what I want. And then when you ask somebody, is it true? It's like, yes, it's true. I believe it as my truth.
Right.
And because you believe it as your truth, that's why it feels so bad. And that's why grief feels so bad. I've lost someone I love. Is that true? Yes, they died. They've gone from my life, and I'll never be able to have that same love again. I won't be able to hug them again. I won't be able to touch them again. And my girlfriend who died, Kate, when she was 36, I told you about her before. She gave me the experience of touching and hugging her, like I would fall asleep in my bed at night and wake up in my astral body. She'd be sitting on the end of the bed. And I'd have this experience of touching her and feeling her as physical. And I knew I wasn't in my physical body when I was hugging her, because she was dead in this life, so-called. And I'm like, I can touch you and hug you, because I used to say, I can't hug you anymore, and I can't go over to your place for a cup of tea. And she proved me wrong. Like, let me prove that stressful thought wrong. You actually can and do hang out and be with your loved ones who have exited the matrix, I say, in another dimension. But we give so much importance to this dimension as our only reality. Instead of expanding our reality into multidimensional realities, including the reality of your astral form at night and your dreams. And so we exist in all those realities simultaneously. And when we awaken to that and we stop giving this reality, somebody dies and I haven't had a conversation with them before they've died, I think, well, I'll have a conversation with them now somewhere else, not physically speaking to them face to face here, but which I did with Mum. So she, as I said, died when she was 50. I was about 16. And we had a lot of unfinished business, her and I, a lot of fighting, a lot of headbutting. Even her being sick was an inconvenience to me, because I'm like a 16-year-old selfish teenager that wanted to go out drinking with my friends and buy shoes and records and stuff like that. Mum being sick was a real inconvenience. Anyway, teenagers, right?
Right.
And I had it out with her in spirit. I contacted her after I realized I could and said, why did we have so much, why did we fight so much? What was going on? Why didn't you love me as much as you love the boys? And she said, yeah. And we just had it out. We had this great conversation and cleared up all that angst in spirit in another dimension. And then she reincarnated back into a physical form. She's now an adult, part of my family. And
Oh, how interesting.
yeah, and she lived with me for a couple of years because her parents moved to the country and she was studying in Sydney. And yeah, there was a real connection between us. And so all the angst that we had as mother and daughter when she was my mother had been cleaned up after she transitioned, in another dimension.
Right.
So yeah,
I
you
think
know, you hear
often
it.
we can't clean things up when someone is in the physical if they're
Oh yeah, you
not.
can.
I mean,
Or if they're not available
no, I
to
mean
it.
if they're not available to it, and but for example, my father just passed last
Mm-hmm.
week, and
Oh,
I was unable to clean things up with him in this
okay.
present because I had confronted him several times, but he wasn't receptive to
Right.
the
Yeah.
shift. And
Yeah.
so, and when I say confronted, it's because I started from the time that I was a teenager when I didn't have a lot of skills in how to, work out something with someone. And it was more confrontational. And as the years got on, I got better at it. But
Mm-hmm.
he was never able to hear me and or accept or take ownership over his actions. So I just got to the point where I said, okay, well, I'm just going to wait for you to transition then, and then we'll deal with it there. And
Right.
it's a wonderful place, actually, to do the work like you did with your mom and like I'm going to do with my dad. So already he's come to me in a visitation dream. And already we've
Nice.
had an interaction, and we didn't do a lot of talking, but we were able to communicate. And I gave him a big hug. And he was a very young man who came to me, and I
Oh
understood
yeah.
that it was a part of him that was, before a lot of his stuff got layered onto him. And even more so, I just saw him for, the little boy that was inside of him that was operating the man's body.
Right.
And I was able to console that little boy who just hadn't been able to do
Exactly.
things right. And that
Exactly.
was a beautiful moment. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, oh, that was great. Now he's able to come to me, and I'm sure he'll come again. And now we're making progress. Thank you. Now we're making progress.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot I want to say about that. As a teacher, I mean, we've had these, fraught family backgrounds because all of that has been a part of our human
Yes.
journey, teaching us about what it is to be human and
Hmm.
how people hurt. And so when you've directly experienced it, mum was very sad, as I said, and I watched her be miserable for 5 years and then die. And dad was angry.
Yes.
His second wife that he left her for left him, ran off, took the kid, and he was angry. And his anger took that anger out on me in violence. And so there was a lot of crap that went down. As I said, I could write a Hollywood movie about it. And I played the victim for a long time. And why? And then as you start waking up, you realize that you created it all. Like you signed up for it. It was
Yeah.
a part of your soul plan. And there was an agreement between mum and dad and you and dad. And, there was an agreement that they would play their role. And it was interesting with dad. I went to dad after I did a personal growth course, which asked, it was not spiritual at all, but it asked you to clean up your messes. So if there were people in your life that you didn't talk to, then you had to go and beg for their forgiveness because you've created that mess. So it was
Hmm.
about accountability, which I
Right.
loved. It was the hardest thing I ever did because we love playing the blame game, as I said before. But to a kid who was beaten up by her father, who was like an innocent child, you can't beg for his forgiveness if he was the one that perpetrated. And yet I did. And
Hmm.
then he took no responsibility for it and was like, yeah, so you should ask for my forgiveness. He just stayed in his righteousness and
Yes.
took no responsibility for it. And it didn't matter because I just needed to love him again and stop hating him because the hate was hurting me,
Yeah.
and I wanted to love myself enough to love this person that I had a conscious I had a spiritual agreement with that he would play that role. So when he was dying, I was like, I want to be there to cross you over and I want to come back and have full memory of that. And I kind of want to say, I told you so, I told you so, because he didn't believe in anything spiritual or life after death or anything. We had lots of conversations about that. And I kind of wanted to prove him wrong. And when he died, I had no memory of any of that. I just was getting nothing. like nothing. And I'm like, damn, why am I getting it? And the guys were laughing at me again because it was only ego that wants to say, I told you so, I told you so. And they wouldn't let me indulge my ego. And then one day, my husband at the time, who said he had no spiritual gifts in that he couldn't speak to, dead people or spirit. Of course he could, but he just didn't believe it. And you create what you believe, right, Jeilene? He's driving the car and we're going through a part of Sydney, which is called the Wakehurst Parkway, which is a little national park between two suburbs. And I always got these amazing experiences in the Wakehurst Parkway. But anyway, he said to me, he's driving the car and he goes, oh my God, I've got your father here. And I said, what? Got your father here with me? He's driving the car going, oh. He's never had an experience like this, like a dead person shows up. And I said, really? Because I couldn't contact him. I was not finding him as I was reaching out. And I said, really? What does he look like? And he said, he's a big smile on his face. I said, what's he saying to you? What's he saying to you? And he said, he's not saying anything. He's not saying anything. And so I connected to his vision and I had this profound communication from him without any words. And it was just this smile of a higher conscious being. It was like this knowing that everything we participated in, the angst, the beat, like he put me in hospital, broke my skull, all that drama that we experienced was all part of the play, like it was all the movie that we were in. It was all scripted. Yeah. And there was just this smile of this knowing. He didn't say anything. I got his face and I got this big smile. And it's like, I don't have to say, I told you so, I told you so, because being under that river of oblivion and saying that there is no such thing as life after death is all part of the human game. Mm-hmm. And then we leave that human game and we return to the knowing. And he was in that place of knowing and he was just smiling at me. And there was so much communication that was said without words. It was just beautiful.
Yes, beautiful. That's how I felt about my dream as well. So much communication between us without having to verbalize anything. It's just that energy connection that you have.
Knowing, yeah.
Yeah, and also that, also when someone passes over, that all of the stuff that happened here, it's not that it didn't happen and that it's irrelevant, but by the same token, it's not meaningful to sort of the connection you have with someone's spirit to spirit. Because like you said, this is all the play that occurs. This is the human game. This is the place where we play out all of the difficult soul energy overlays that we have in our energy field that need to be ameliorated, need to be neutralized. And so we have all these experiences, right, that are perceived to be quite difficult, but really are just trying to unravel all those knots of energy that we've got between us and between ourselves and our own soul energy. So in that way, it is good to recognize that these people that can be so difficult for us and such antagonists can be just in service to us in some way, and that they made that agreement with us, to be that antagonist before they got here. And the willingness to be an antagonist and to be hated or to be the bad guy or, the person that is responsible for another person's pain, that's tough going, right? That's a lot to take on as a soul to
it's a lot
agreement to show up as a human who's going to be,
as the soul, it's harder to play the persecutor than the victim. Definitely.
Oh yeah. Everybody wants to be liked, right?
Yeah. You have to pinch yourself off from the love of who you are so strongly. And that, and it's like your emotional guidance. It like the more you pinch yourself off, the more it hurts.
Yes.
So
yeah,
people that do terrible things to others, it's painful to them. They might say it's not, they might numb themselves with drugs or have numbed their emotions or whatever to try and not receive that pain. But it hurts. It just hurts to hate someone. It just hurts.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what they've done. It hurts to hate them. And I remember thinking, I had a lot of stuff on my ex-husband, my first husband, a lot of like unfair, you didn't do your part. And I was holding a lot of angst. And I remember one day thinking, it's just holding this angst is just hurting me. Like, let him off the hook. Just, he came over one day to return my daughter who was little at the time. And I just said, you're off the hook. You don't have to pay me maintenance. You don't have to show up as a father. You don't have to do any of the things that I think that you should be. Just live your life, and I hope you find yourself. And, you're not the vortex through which my abundance flows. I was listening to Abraham at the time. I am the vortex through which my abundance flows, and I've got to stop looking at you for being that vortex through which abundance flows, because he wasn't paying any maintenance, and he wasn't doing his share, right? And I was holding a lot of angst around that. But I had to take back that responsibility that it wasn't his job, it's my job. That money would flow to me when I aligned my energy, and by hating him or being upset at him was not aligning my energy. And I just remember when I let him off the hook that day, he left the house. And honestly, Jeilene, I felt like I was levitating. I felt so light, letting go of angst. You do it for yourself. You do it for yourself.
You do it for yourself, right? Yes. Carrying all that burden of all the hate,
carrying the burden
is enormous.
Unfairness of this world. Right.
Yeah. And I think that's why it is so important for people to open up to their spiritual self. And by the way, also I want to make a note, because a lot of people think that when you let someone off the hook, it's spiritual bypassing. And I really want to make the point that it is not spiritual or emotional bypassing to let someone off the hook. What it actually is, it's about coming into a state of neutrality, which the Arcturians are always on about, right? They're always about, hey, bring yourself back into neutrality, have your emotions, understand your emotions, reap the benefits from them, but always know how to come back to neutrality, because your emotions are there to be that signpost, but they're not there to overwhelm you, right? They're there to teach you and to inform you, but they're not there to set the tone of your being all the time. You've always got to come back to that place of neutrality. And so when we release our anger and our angst against someone else, then we come back to neutrality. We're not just saying, oh, it's okay that you did these horrific things, because it's not that we're validating somebody's bad behavior. It's more that we don't need to take ownership over that bad behavior and make it ours and own it as our own. We can observe, we can watch, we can have participated at some level, but we don't need to carry it with us and have it be ours. That's theirs. That belongs to them. That's their story.
Theirs. That's it. And I got a powerful lesson one day about that. I had moved into a house in between husbands. Annika was little, and I'd moved into this house. It was a split level house, and I was a single mum with like a 10-year-old daughter, and living at the bottom section of the house was a single guy with a 10-year-old daughter. And it was beautiful, because the two girls became best friends, and they're still best friends today. They're in their 30s.
Oh,
and but some angst happened between he and I, and he got violent, and he ripped me off money wise and wouldn't pay his share of the bills, and he was going through his problems. Anyway, one day I was very angry about it. I was hanging the washing on the line, thinking angry thoughts like, how can I get back at this guy, thinking all that stuff. Revenge. And my guide said to me, you don't need to revenge this guy, Karen. And I'm like, what? And I said, well, think about it as in alignment of energy. You need to clean up your alignment of energy. But this man's bad behavior is because of his alignment of energy. Imagine what else he's going to attract into his life that he won't like. You don't have to do anything to him.
Right.
Just watch. And I remember I was hanging the washing up, and we lived in this place with this great view, and I was looking out at this view, and I just totally calmed down, and I said, I don't have to do anything to this man. He'll do it to himself. And over the years after that, I watched this man's life implode. The love of his life, which was his daughter, was taken away. She went to live with her mum in New Zealand. He lost his job. He got sick. He got a job as a garbage collector. He was on the back of the truck, and he was hit by another truck, and he was smashed to pieces. Oh. And at that point, I thought to myself, like all this stuff was happening, I thought to myself, man, like when you think about revenge, like what you could have done to somebody that had hurt you.
Yeah, you wouldn't have thought of all those things.
Never have thought of that.
Right, exactly.
Like and then he became a life coach.
Which is a real commentary on this industry. Actually, the commentary is that when we go through a lot of difficult, trying times, it can jolt us into learning how to be better humans. Right. It really can.
It's so interesting, because at that time, his name was Abraham. At that time, I had just found someone had sent me the Abraham CDs, right? And I was so resonating with what they said. It's like I'd been showcasing New World teachers for like 5 or 6 years before that, listening to them. And I knew that everyone had a piece missing. There was a piece missing. And that was that incredible accountability and you are the creator of your reality part. Because everyone had a lot of great things to say, but they were still playing a victim in some area. And I'm like, no, you're creating your reality. And then Abraham's teaching came into my life and it totally aligned with what I was being taught. And it just like made my heart sing, because it's not easy to be so accountable, like radical responsibility, complete accountability for how you've created your life, right? Whether from your ego perspective or your soul's perspective. And I remember before we had the angst between the two of us, I had found this information and I was so excited to share it with him because his name was Abraham, right? And then he started being an arsehole and I kind of held off in sharing it with him. And then his bad behavior got worse and worse and worse until he got violent. And at that point, I'm like, well, I'm not going to share this. And so I held back, which was mean of me, really. But he did eventually find the material, like after we split parted ways, he did eventually find the teachings. And I think it really resonated with him. And hence he became a life coach. But it's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Well, his soul is probably seeking that, first finds you, right? And has the opportunity, but isn't ready. So has to go through all of the other stuff. Well, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. You can have this great relationship with Karen and discover all that you need to know and be on your merry way. Or you can get hit by a garbage truck, you can lose your daughter, you can get financially ruined.
You can lose your job.
Either way, we're going to do this thing.
Exactly, Jeilene. Exactly.
Right?
Either way, it's going to happen. Exactly.
It's going to happen. And you've got choices. Once again, we've got choices, right? It can be easy and it can be difficult.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And I love that. I love that about this place. It's like every single day we have choices to make. And every time we make choices, we generate change. And every time change begins to occur, if we consistently come back to being in compassion and love when we're making changes, we can't go wrong, right? We stay in that flow of our soul and we keep expanding and growing. It's when we start to make changes for the wrong reasons, or not wrong, that sounds like a judgment, but really start to make changes from that frequency of limitation, fear,
scarcity,
that then we start to get into that place where we start to make choices that don't bring in expansion and abundance.
Exactly. We make choices in alignment with where we are vibrationally speaking at the time.
Yes.
So that the guides have always said to me, never make a decision when you're angry, because often when we're angry, we make decisions like, I'm going to break up with you. I'm going to leave this job. I'm going to do this. Because anger sort of is such a heightened frequency that it sort of inspires you to act.
Very motivational.
Motivational, right? But you've got to find alignment with what you want before you make choices. And often, okay, they're laughing at me. always. Okay, that's it.
Always the way they correct the vernacular as you're talking. They do that to me all the time too.
Always, when you align your vibration, you feel better. You make a different decision action decision.
Yes, and by the way, on your website, as I was reading, you had a quote there, and I think it was from Abraham, or maybe it's something that you wrote about the difference between inspiration and motivation. And I thought that was really interesting. And that really resonated with me, that it's very true that motivation is inspired by you trying to make a decision that is, what is it that is going to, it's
motivation.
like action of like, I don't want this to happen, so I'm going to do this. Like it's a fear-based, whereas inspiration is creativity.
Is that creative energy moving through you to the point where you just act. You act. It's like you can't help but act. It's kind of like when you dance and then that energy moves through you and your body moves. There's not a thought. It's like you move because you're being inspired to move. Yeah, you don't usually think about, when you get up to dance, you don't usually think about put that step there, put that. So you just move. Yeah, motivation is, it is Abraham. They said it. It comes from a place of like you feel like you have to motivate yourself in order to get what you want. So you're coming from a place of I don't have. Yeah, and inspiration is being in alignment with that, what it is you want, and then being inspired to act. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's so important because so many people are trying to reinvent themselves right now, or
mhm,
they're on the
mhm,
path of reinventing themselves because during
mhm.
sort of a lot of the shutdown period, people were able to take the time to realize that what they were doing was really a career that was motivated by that fear of lack, and that
Right.
spending time away from it or cloistered at home, they thought, gosh, I'm not spending enough time outside. I'm not spending enough time with my family. I'm not spending enough time doing what I really love. I'm just doing this job that's very mechanical because I think that I've been taught that I've got to be in this system and make more money and be productive. And what is productivity anyway? And so it was a wonderful break for people to take that sort of reassessment of their lives and get more into a mode of inspiration versus motivation.
Yeah.
I love that you put that on your website, and I hope that people see that and they start to recognize that, I have really been driven by these motivations and fear of not
Hmm.
having versus what really connects me to what makes my heart sing and what makes me
Right.
feel like
Patting the cat,
I'm
going to the beach. Mm-hmm.
exactly petting
Hmm.
the cat and going to the beach,
Yeah.
being in your
Going to
zen,
the beach.
being in
You
that
know,
space.
being in your zen, being in your bliss, finding alignment with energy is all of it.
Yes.
I read something, I don't know where it wasn't Abraham, but or somebody was saying it the other day, that time, it was about time, they were talking about time. And then they said healing is not about time. They use different words, and then I sort of expanded on that. It's about, I can't remember what they said, but as I was talking to them, I'm like, yes, yes, it's not about how much time it'll take to heal. And then the guide said to me, it's about alignment of energy. It wasn't something they said, but I put it on Facebook. Yeah, it's about, everything is about alignment of energy. It's like people say, when will I get what I want? When will I get better? When will I
Right.
heal? We talk about time, but time doesn't exist. There is only alignment of energy. So when you align to that frequency of what it is you're asking for, happens instantly. And that's what
Yes.
the ETs know. I want to say to you
Yeah.
something about the ETs, because they live outside of this time space continuum that we live in, and they understand alignment of energy, and they understand how to do that, more than humans do. We're just too busy in the river of oblivion playing victims to the world, victim
Right.
to a virus, and victim to the politicians, and victim to the ex-husband, and the weather, and the financial crisis, and we're using every excuse in the world to not align our energy and feel bad about life or ourselves. But in the book that I read recently that I had Samuel, I know I'm harping on about it because I've just had him on the show and I loved it. The Taya Uber prophecy talked about a planet that had gone through a similar thing that Earth had gone through in a level 1 category, where we got caught up with money and financial system and
Hmm.
materialism and war, and they ended up having a nuclear war, and there was this mass destruction. But anyway, I might be getting things confused, but on this planet there were the mantis beings that had grown to this humongous size, and they
Uh,
weren't like 9 foot tall, they were like 5 meters tall.
oh, wow.
Yeah, but they weren't benevolent beings. They were destructive beings. They were basically like an insect that, like that had become 5 meters tall.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as I think about the mantas, I they've never really been connected specifically to a planet. We don't talk about them
No.
as being
Yeah.
Arcturian or Palladian or
Right.
Syrian, or
They're
from some sort of
not.
star
Yeah.
system, right? So when I read about these manta beings becoming, I thought that was fascinating. It ended up that the ETs that were overseeing that planet ended up destroying them because they were just too destructive to the planet, because there was this nuclear war and there was all this energy, fraught energy on this planet. It was just talking about this planet because that's where we could head if we don't
Yes.
clean up our crap. And have they ever said to you, what planets they inhabited? Here's me quizzing you, but
No, but that's interesting because I have been talking to them a lot, and the thing that about the group that I work with mainly, they're very affiliated with the Earth, and what they told me about their origin story and their beginnings is that they started out as just very high vibrational, high dimensional beings that had to learn how to operate and create in each dimensional frequency, but it was much easier to create in, say, the 12th dimension. And they worked their way down over the however many millions of years they've been in existence. But the original thought of creator that created everything was to create a being that would help propagate life in different star systems. So
Yeah.
they really are in service to that creative expansion of universal consciousness. And they do it in different energy systems. So they do it in different dimensional spaces. So they are more attuned to dimensional spaces than one particular planet. That's how I view them. Their home is the multidimensional field. And
Mm-hmm.
so they set up camp in different planets energetically. Like the group I work
Mm-hmm.
with is very focused on Earth, and I would say they're very focused on DNA on Earth. So the
Mm-hmm.
explosion of life that is capable here because of where we are, situated next to the sun and the way that life is supported here with our atmosphere and everything else. But that all occurred through the DNA that came here that they brought and they helped to seed. And then they just sit back and watch. They don't tend to interfere very much. They're observers. It's like plant the seed, watch the tree grow, don't prune it. And
Mm-hmm.
the interesting thing is that they have been interacting with us more and more lately because they do see things sort of getting off the rails here and there. There's a lot of distortion and there's a lot of energy imbalance on the planet. And I think that probably occasionally they think, well, we need to sort of infuse some of this teaching, some of this empowerment for humanity so that our experiment doesn't completely go off the rails. But it's not that
Right.
they're the only beings that are present and part of it, because as ones that brought life here, but then observe and sort of lean back and allow, there's been so much interference with other beings, with humans and our DNA. And
Right.
right, and you could call it interference, which has a little bit of a pejorative sound to it, but there's also infusion of some of
Mhm.
the probably the better attributes that humans have
What
as
they're
well.
saying is experiments, interference,
Experiment,
I'd say
yes,
experiments. Yeah.
experiments, right.
So in this book, The Cyber Prophecy, it talks about where different races on Earth came from in the cosmos. It talks about the black race being
Mm-hmm.
the first race on human race on Earth, that they
Mm-hmm.
came from this planet. And it talks about how the Thaya like the race of beings that they're like 9 foot tall humanoids, they're hermaphroditic, they're hermaphrodites, in a level 9 category. I was chatting to the guides this morning about levels and dimensions, and they were saying something really interesting. They were saying that level 9 is not ninth dimension. They said a
Uh-huh.
dimension is different to a category. And I said, really? I said, tell me more about that. And then I got busy. But yeah, so we're in a level 1 category planet, and then there are different planets in the universe that are still in this dimension, but they're in a different category.
Right.
So
That makes
well, that
sense.
was interesting. I needed to talk to them more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun
Anyway,
one to dive into.
uh, but that they said, I'll send you the book. They said that like as they've witnessed other planets like the Mantid, they will help. Like when the planet destroyed itself with nuclear war,
Yeah.
wiped out all life, they put trees and cows and things on the planet. They'll sort of help, but they'll sit back and wait for the beings on the planet that live there to do with what it is. But
Yes.
that
Yeah.
all the races on Earth come from different planets. Like the Caucasian race came from somewhere else, and he called them the yellow people. But the prophecy of the book is this precipice that, and I guess that's why they put this story in the book of this other planet destroying itself with nuclear war. That we are at that precipice where
Yes.
our consciousness is being overtaken by our technology, and we need to raise our consciousness. And I think everyone knows that. Anyway, I've discussed that a lot on shows, and many other shows talk about this. So we're at this juncture point now. We need to like really expand consciousness on this planet in order
Yes.
for a better. So what have the Mantid been saying to you about that? Because the book was written in the 80s, the late 80s. It was an experience. A guy had this experience of going to another planet and hanging out with these highly conscious beings. And then he wrote the book. So it wasn't a psychic experience. It was a physical experience where he lived on this other planet. I thought it was great. His name was Michel Dimarcain. He died in 2018. He exited the Matrix.
Mhm.
But I'm because I've heard many people say that we've kind of passed that point where we're going to destroy ourselves, and we're now on a kind of positive timeline. What have the mantids said to you about where we are?
So that's interesting. That what they talk about is that, and this, I'd say it's when this type of questioning happens, I often end up talking to the Arcturians as well. And what they're saying is that we're in this era of personal responsibility, and you and I touched on that already. And then part of that personal responsibility is that we do have to create our own timeline that we are going to live on, and that there are going to be a tremendous number of humans that are probably going to go down a timeline that is going to lead to a lot of destruction and destruction for themselves and for parts of the planet. But the Earth herself will always survive. It's just that the humans will not be able to survive on the Earth for a while. And so there will be, and what I've seen in many scenarios of whether I'm working on somebody and looking at their future lives, or one of their future lives comes into the session, or I'm looking at my own timelines, it's Earth looking very different to me. Not many people on it, very few. And so I see that technology, I do think that many races have gotten on other planets to a point with technology where the technology starts to take over, and then very quickly the beings start to destroy themselves because of that, because that is not a sustainable way for a human to operate. It's a denial of the very sort of function of who we are as expressions of Earth, right? Because every molecule of our being comes from the elements of the Earth, right? We're not created out of just, the air. It's her body. We are her body. We're extensions of her body, as is every being on this planet. So every plant, every, animal, tree, insect. So we are all expressions of that. And incorporating technology into our bodies is like the antithesis of that. And so it's definitely not in alignment. And I think the whole thing starts to unravel very quickly. The whole experiment unravels very quickly when we start to veer away from sort of the essence of our being while we're here. The experiment is to be part of Earth, and we're part of her evolution. She's part of ours. And incorporating technology into our bodies is just not the way. So however it happens, and I don't like to be a sort of a doomsday sayer, it could happen 50 years from now, it could happen 150 years from now, but I do see the population on this planet seriously shifting. And as we know, souls will transition and then have time on a different planet somewhere else, or in a different star system, or doing something else. And death is never the end. Like you said, death is not dying. And I say that as sort of the caveat to all of that, because I don't want people to think that, it's just another person saying, we're just killing ourselves and we're all going to die. But the fact of the matter is that the mantis aren't very emotionally attached to whether we're here or on another planet doing the same thing. And I don't think that there's going to be very many people left on Earth for a while. Earth needs to rest. Earth needs
to regenerate
because we are raping her, and we can't go on like this. And so it's going to get to a tipping point, and then whether it's from, I said this.
I'm getting this image of fleas on a dog. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I used to always say that too. The Earth is going to shake us off like fleas on a dog. And I don't mean to be callous or unemotional, and I know sometimes the mantis can come off that way, but I honestly think whether it's a bacteria or a virus, or whether it's it's technology, there are going to be several different ways in which the human population shifts in numbers on this planet, and the Earth gets a rest, and then perhaps we come back again in 5,000 years, but there will be a rest period for her, and we will be in other places.
Well, what they said to me about the fleas on the dog was, when you said that, they said, well, it's just like fleas on a dog. You can have millions of them on the dog, but you're actually not going to kill the dog. The fleas are not going to kill the dog.
Right.
It doesn't make the dog healthy, but it's not going to kill the dog. Yeah. Right. So that was the image they gave me, and the message they gave me with the fleas on a dog.
It's funny. They've used that with me a few times.
Have they? Maybe that's why they gave it to me.
They like that. They like that one.
see the fleas on a dog. But yeah, like I think that, the message in the book, the prophecy is that because they're the overseers in a different category than Earth, that are overseeing what we're doing, if we don't get our crap together, they're just going to wipe us. They're going to put flea stuff on the dog to get rid of all the fleas.
Right. They're going to set off
they're
the
gonna,
bomb,
they're
right?
just, and then
The flea
and
bomb.
it talks about in the flea bomb, exactly. It talks about in the book that they've done that on other planets when the consciousness hasn't raised and the destruction has just got out of control. They're just like,
Yeah.
okay, these dudes just not getting it. Let's just start
But there
again.
are so many people who are raising their consciousness.
There are.
Are
Yeah,
so many
yeah.
people that are self-actualizing and coming into a state of awareness that
There are,
allows
yeah.
them to jump on a timeline that is very expansive. So either they end up staying here or getting transported into another star system where they're able to continue that work.
Well, what I'm getting as I'm talking to you now about this is the information that's coming through is, regenerating Gaia's body is not as it's not like a 5,000 year rest period like you think. That was kind of the message they gave me. It's like, think about a dog. Like, yeah, that analogy is not working for me anymore. But anyway, so what they're saying is that, human life can still continue on planet Earth, and she can regenerate with human life still thriving here on planet Earth. We don't have to wipe you all off, is what they're saying. We don't even have to wipe, 2/3 of you off or a third of you off. It can regenerate, but it is dependent on our consciousness, on what we're doing with our
Absolutely.
consciousness.
No,
Yeah.
anything's possible,
Mm-hmm.
but is that going to happen in the amount of time before, there's a lot of impetus to start incorporating technology into humans, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
impetus to
Well, I love technology, to tell you the truth. We're using it right now to communicate with each other.
definitely.
And even in this book on this category 9 planet, they talk about some of their technology. And what was really interesting was I was away recently, finally went into the Red Center to see the rock, to see Mother Rock, Uluru.
Hmm.
I had avoided it for like 25 years because I thought, I'm a water baby. I live on the coast. I've got the water. I'm surrounded by water. I just love water. And I think about being in the Red Center, away from Mother Ocean. It's never really thrilled me. And the Red Center is hot and there's lots of flies, but it is our winter at the moment. So it was the perfect time to go. Girlfriend said, I'm going to go out to Uluru. And I just said, okay, time to go. And I just jumped on it and went with her. And she made me do this big walk on this mountain. And I'm very unfit, very fat and unfit. And I knew I couldn't do it. And I said I wasn't going to do it with her. And then that morning I thought, oh, just do it. You regret it if you don't. But anyway, I struggled getting down the mountain. And it took all my focus to put one foot in front of the other because I was in pain. And I was dreaming about this technology. Why can't I just hover around this mountain, like have some sort of technology, instead of having to slug up it and then slug back down with this big fat physical body? I just have some technology, like some anti-gravitic stuff on my feet, and I'm just hovering around this mountain. I can go deep into its crevices and look at it above, and I'm having this visualization of doing this, like, why can't I do that?
Uh-huh.
And then I came back and read this book because I had Samuel on the show, and that's their technology. They called it the Lashiliac. And it's a handheld device which creates an anti-gravitic field around you that you do exactly that. You fly,
Interesting.
basically. But it is a technology. It's not implanted in your body, but it's not a consciousness technology. So these people in this high category planet could consciously levitate. And Michelle said to them, why don't you just levitate? Because they went on a bit of a trip and they used this Lashiliac thing. And he said, why don't you just levitate there? And he said, well, we could, but it actually takes a lot of focus. It actually takes a lot of energy to levitate. So this thing's just easy to use. And I thought, interesting. But yeah, they have the ability to levitate at will through their consciousness.
Well,
But then
it's
they
true.
had
Yeah, and it's true that
technology.
technology can be fantastic and helps to do wonderful things,
Yeah,
but it's all dependent on the consciousness of
the
those who wield
consciousness
it.
using it. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
And so I think that hopefully our technology doesn't go beyond um, a safe place while our consciousness is still in such a low place.
Oh, I think that's happened.
Yeah. See, that's
I
what
mean,
I'm
our
talking about, is
technology,
that
we have
it's very
for
dangerous.
70 odd years now, or 100, or, since they've developed the atomic bomb, we've had the ability to wipe out life on planet Earth as we know it. We haven't yet. And according to the ETs, that they've interfered with that, because if we did that, it would cause this ripple throughout the universe. So they interfere with us humans, the fleas on the dog, when it's going to affect the rest of the cosmos. So they have stopped some nuclear blasts, even though there's been many. They've also stopped many. But we have to reach the point where we want to stop killing each other in order to gain control and just be unified, start loving each other and work together. Different countries.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most important thing for people to focus on right now to get out of the angst and the fear and the limitation and get into that place? Because I think that it's great for us to talk about, and that's what you should be doing. But I think people struggle with maintaining that. And I think people struggle with getting out of their heads and getting out of their overwhelming emotions and being in that space. That not everyone is, when they're not vibrationally attuned to all of their mob or their spirit helpers, then they can lose sight of, kind of popping up and getting the 40,000 foot view all the time. And they tend to stay in the river and get lost. So what would you say to people, I think anyone watching this who is struggling with that right now? Because a lot of people really are struggling right now. They're having a hard time. And how would you help people get out of that so that they can start to have that higher perspective and jump on a timeline that is going to be more expansive and connect them into that limitless experience?
Well, it's the oneness principle that every spiritual teacher has talked about throughout time and space, that we are one. I mean, in the book Conversation with God, it says it over and over and over again. There's only one of us in the room. There's only one of us in the room. There's only one of us in the room. You're God. I'm God. There's only one of us in the room. And it is implementing that not as a belief or a knowing, but as a way of living. Yeah. So when you see someone that you disagree with strongly, the murderer, the rapist,
right,
to understand that action comes from a soul that is also the divine. And to bring that back, like when you do things that you don't like, when you make mistakes or when you do something you don't like, to remember that you are a spirit or a soul having a human experience, and that this experience is here to be lived and experienced, but it's not who you really are. Who you really are is love, and who you really are is unified with every other soul. So, Jesus said it when he said, I offer you the other cheek. The first person that hasn't sinned, throw the stone. There's just been so many teachings about this oneness principle. So when you judge someone harshly, is to come back to yourself and say, when have I felt like that? And I've acted badly because I've believed that stressful thought. Even the cabal that run this world that are trying to control humanity. These are people that might be in positions of power and wealth, but they're still living in fear and believing that in order to feel powerful, they need to control others. Like, when have you done that in your life? In order to feel powerful, I need to control my kids. I need to stop them from yelling or speaking so you can,
right.
It helps you excuse others when you find yourself doing it, that powerful teaching of, the person that hasn't sinned. It's like the religious thing, but you haven't had a stressful thought where you've acted in a bad way. If you've never done that, throw your stone. But we've all experienced what it is to be human and to be living in fear. And it ain't easy sometimes to remember that we are love. And so those people that are trying to control the human race and we're living in fear, and they forget that we're all love and we're all unified. It's like they haven't awakened, but have you? And so it really comes down to radical responsibility and you living that principle of love and unity as your truth, and stop asking everyone else to live it if you can't live it as your truth. It's really a, the global perspective is really a personal perspective, because you are me and I am you and we are one. So living your truth, like being committed to living your truth, is all we can do. And and that will have profound effects on the rest of the world. Profound effects, because we are one. And so when you stand in your truth, you transform those around you. I stand in my truth, talking about aliens, and the girlfriend I went away with, She's a beautiful conscious dance teacher who's always connecting people to the divine, but she doesn't have the galactic conversation, right? And I'm talking about all this stuff that I've been talking to you about. And she's like, it's too way out there for me, Karen. It's just too way out there. You know, she can't wrap her head around it. And yet I don't stop talking about it because that's my truth. Yeah. And if it's too way out there for her today, it won't be tomorrow. It might hit her like belief system and like, no, I can't go there. It just doesn't make sense to me today. It doesn't stop us being friends. You know what I mean? But tomorrow she might, you know, awaken. But she said to me, she was over here for dinner the other night. All my friends around me are talking about this galactic stuff at the moment. Like they're knocking, you know, it's knocking on the door.
It's knocking on the door.
So living your truth and with abandon, you know, fearlessly, living love and living what you know, live love fearlessly with abandon. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, no, that's a really good message. And especially the message of oneness and being fearless and being true to who you are.
Yep.
And expressing that without fear, I think.
Without fear. Yeah, yes. With love. You know, with love.
Not
Someone might call you crazy. Someone
Yeah.
might call you. I've actually stopped. I used to get the Christians on my YouTube channel telling me I was, you know, the incarnation of the devil and or what have you. But that's all stopped. I don't get any negative comments on my channel anymore. Yeah, so it's all stopped. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, your vibe attracts your tribe, and you create your own reality. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. And that is so important, I think, for people to understand right now too, is that just, like you said, radical ownership over what your life is. You create it.
Yeah, radical responsibility.
Yeah, radical responsibility. I love it. You should get a t-shirt made, radical responsibility. I love it. It has such a good ring to it. So perfect. Yeah. So Karen, how can people get a hold of you? You do sessions, don't you? You do private sessions still? Do you still do that?
Do private sessions. Got some courses running, meet your spirit guides. You know, I talk about it in a very kind of linear way, but that's the way people understand it. Meet your spirit guides.
Yeah.
Deliberate creation 101, advanced deliberate creation. It's all what we've been talking about, but just broken down into sort of segments and private sessions and readings. And but a lot of people reach out to me to sort of have that connection to their spirit guides, and I can make it really simple. When you believe that you've got it, you've got it. You know, you can spend thousands of dollars doing courses like I did, or you can just change your belief and go from I don't have connection with my spirit guides to I do, and you've created that reality. I mean, we just get to create our reality, right? But it's that bridge from I don't believe to I do believe. That is that journey, you know.
Yes.
And that sometimes takes work.
Yeah, a lot of people need sort of the hardcore truth or the hardcore experiential, you know, episode or something.
They kind of need evidence that they're not just making it up. Like, am I just making
evidence.
This up?
That's right. That's right. That was the word I was looking for. Yes. Well, I think it's wonderful that you're still out here doing this and you've been at it for a long time and you just keep on going.
Keep on going.
That is an inspiration.
As I was saying to you before with on the recording, we've got some big plans for next year for getting this message out there more, showcasing more.
Yeah, tell me about that a little bit.
Well, it's kind of happening. There's nothing to tell yet. We've got to get it up and running. We're in the planning stages at the moment. Yeah. We're in the planning stages and the name keeps changing. So if I tell you one name today, it might be a different name tomorrow.
Okay. But your intention is to create a platform for classes and
for new old teachers and and just on different platforms where people can find it on different platforms like streaming platforms. Like if, you know, you're sort of not Netflix yet, but you know, your streaming platforms, when you sort of sign up to a streaming platform, you can find conscious kind of conversations on there. Yeah, so kind of injecting it more into the mainstream.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good. Great. Well, we'll look forward to tuning into that and hearing more. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today and me. I love our conversations every time. And I love how when we're talking, you're tapping in, I'm tapping in. And so
and that's cool, right?
Us in the room, right? It's the whole crowd. It's the whole mob.
It's the whole mob.
It's the whole mob, and they all have something to say. And actually, what I love about multidimensional beings that we connect with. It's that, they still have their own personalities and they still have their opinions about things and they have their own experiences too, just like we as souls have our experiences and we come with all of that preloaded. They have theirs as well. And even if they're very high dimensional beings, they've still had experiences that,
But what I find is they have such a great sense of humor. More often than not, they are
Yes,
laughing. They're laughing
absolutely.
at me. And so many times I'm like, oh, give me a break, guys. I'm human mind. Give me a break. I think they laugh at me because it's kind of like they know that I know who I am. But in those times that I forget, they think that's hilarious. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I think
Hmm.
that we laugh too when we see people fall off chairs and stuff like that. We know that you can sit on a chair and we know you can walk, but when you stumble, we think that's hilarious. It's kind of that same thing. Like when you lose your footing, it's funny. And as humans, we watch endless videos of people falling over and making mistakes and laugh at that.
Yes.
I feel like that's how they are with me too. They're always laughing at me when when I'm searching for answers in such funny ways, like going to see gurus and like yeah, they laugh at me. They think I'm
Oh,
hilarious.
yeah. I also love the way they tend to be very matter of fact and, it's just like,
Mhm.
hey, this is just how it is. It's okay. You don't have to worry about it.
They're outside of that emotional drama that we all
They
get caught
are.
up with. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
attachment. They're outside of attachment. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
clinging. Hmm.
Yes.
Attachment to anything being the source of our happiness, because we get attached to, we get attached to our life. Like I'm trying to stay alive, because if I die, then it'd be
Then
terrible. It's
what?
like,
Right.
yeah, we get so attached to things being the source of our happiness, and the message is you are the source of your happiness. If you're in the body, if you're out of the body, you're still the source. You are the
Exactly.
source. It's not the money that's bringing you the happiness, or the lover that's bringing you the happiness, or the job, that's bringing you the happiness, or the success. I think that this whole success matrix has distorted so much, and there are so many motivational coaches out there trying to teach you how to be successful, and it's all coming from lack and scarcity consciousness.
Yes.
And
Yes.
really the message is that you are the source. Be
Yeah.
that which you desire. Like be the love that you want. Be the success. Be the abundance. If you want money, give money. Like be it, because you
Yes.
are the source. You are the extension of source energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Darling, well, it's been great. I wanted to say too, I loved your chat on Third Eye Salon with Matthew Mornian. I thought the two
Oh,
of you
yeah, that
chatting,
was
that was
so
great.
fun. That was so
Yeah.
fun. I love that. Yeah,
Yeah, I loved the two of you together. That was really cool.
yeah,
And
that was
Kathy
really
again,
good.
of course.
I'm gonna ask him to come and
He's cool, right? Yeah, I
yeah,
liked Matthew.
yeah, I really liked his energy. It was really good, and I love the way that yeah, you can tell when somebody's connecting into that space because they tend to
Hmm.
be very sort of like matter of fact and just yeah,
And he's funny too.
and
Yeah,
he's
he's very matter
funny.
of fact
Yeah,
and funny.
good sense of
But
humor.
we'll get the two of you doing some more conferences. We've got some things happening, this year, next year. So we'll get you on some. And
Fantastic.
as I said, I'm sure that Sheila would love to put you into the cosmic conversations in the Wish Alliance, Galactic Alliance. And yeah, she's booked out for the rest of the year. I think she's booked out. But sometimes people drop out. And she's always saying, who do you recommend? Oh, it's 222 in Australia. I love that
Ah,
right now.
lovely.
She says, who do you recommend? So I'll remember to recommend you. Anyway, I
All right,
told her about you
love.
this morning. Big love to
Thank
you.
you. You too. Thanks so much for joining me for this time. It's so wonderful to see you. I love you. You're absolutely wonderful.
Oh,
So
darling one. You're wonderful
we'll
too.
look
Big love to
forward
you.
to continuing the conversation in the months ahead. All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.